Have either of you seen The Big Short?
I
In a few
haven't.
years.
Yeah, Mark Baum and Michael Burry.
Yep.
Who was the one guy that was the fast talking? He had the Jenga puzzle. I can't remember his name, but that dude was funny. But I think I'm gonna go back and watch it just for the hell of it. How many people do you know have told you a story in the last year about they're trying to buy a house? The one goes up for sale right now. The realtor calls them. By the time it's noon tomorrow, there's 50 people that walk through it, and it's sold for 50 grand over listing with no inspection, and the buyer's eating all the fees.
All cash too.
All cash. Where's all the cash coming from, dude?
The
No
trillions
idea.
that were pumped into the market the last couple of years.
I remember that I sent you an article before, Kane, that half or so, don't quote me on that exactly, the Manhattan sales were all cash, right?
Right.
That wasn't how it was in like Michigan. And now I'm like, I had a friend that was they're looking for a house for like 3 months. Like, we keep getting beat out on all cash offers. I'm like, who's got all the money around here? Okay. Crazy times.
Well, I think
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Kate.
Dennis. I think the important things to note here are looking at things like the interest rates, how that's affecting prices, how that's affecting mortgage payments. Because the follow-on question is, are we in a bubble? And is this bubble about to pop?
I mean, we always talked about the everything bubble. But, I'm looking at they're now talking about extending the school loan moratorium longer. And I just saw on TV in Wayne County, they're stopping foreclosures until 2023. And I feel like they're doing things that really isn't going to help inflation or allowing us to really deal with the issue. If those foreclosures don't happen, there's probably a lot of homes that are, there should be more liquidity in the market. It's like 200 billion and like school loan payments haven't been made. So that, Kane, do you think that 200 billion is going into people's savings accounts?
Oh, I doubt it.
Yeah, it's getting pumped into the market, which is only making inflation worse. So I don't know. I was looking for investment properties and stuff, and it's got to a point where I'm gonna sit still. And if this is where it stays, then I'm not really losing anything. The prices are high now, and if I buy something a year from now, prices will still be high. So what's to lose, right? But if they crash, that might not be so bad, right? Did you see the article about like BlackRock or Blackstone, whatever the hell that company is? They were buying up a bunch of houses.
Yeah, at the start of the pandemic, or not even the start, about midway through. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what do they know? Were they sitting down at Capitol Grill somewhere, drinking a Crown Royal, and someone in the government said, "Hey, we're going to prop this up forever."
Yeah, that's a great question. Because the other thing that goes through my mind is, if I think it was BlackRock, like if they know something that the rest of the market doesn't, like what happened with Zillow's iBuying unit, and they couldn't figure it out, and then they lost a bunch of money. Maybe it's a different business model, but surely at some level you're acting on the same level of information.
Dennis, has Zillow ever been right about your house price?
No.
Mine neither. So, yeah, that's like technology going wrong, right? We're just going to automate this. Yeah, it didn't work out so well. You ever see how much you lose in buying power for every point mortgage rates go up? Like, if we go from 3% to 6%, the amount of house you can buy drops off dramatically.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in this world anyway, it seems like we only build $500,000 houses or better. You don't really see any kind of affordable housing going up anymore. I gotta imagine this is going to slow down real estate and then the construction markets. How does it not crash?
It's got to get propped up. for as long as the government wants to prop it up, I suppose.
I mean, yeah, midterms coming up, gas prices are high. They have no choice but to raise rates now. They went as long as they could, seeing if it was going to get better. And I just saw General Motors is shutting down their production lines again for conductors, semiconductors shortage. There's still issues getting food. I saw something on Bloomberg can. I'm sure you probably saw this, but the only thing keeping us from a full-blown food crisis is rice right now. I don't know if you saw that chart.
I didn't see that. No, that's interesting.
Bloomberg. Yeah, and it's like, man, there's a lot of turmoil going on. And then you got this other inflation pressure. So you think they got to put, at least 2 more 50 basis point raises probably at a minimum this year. I wouldn't doubt more than that. Going to drop that buying power way down. Maybe that's why they were buying, like BlackRock was buying up all the properties, because they know you're only going to be able to afford the rent. What else are you going to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I sometimes wonder how this affects, like, on the executive search side, because we relocate a lot of people across the country. Our companies taking in consideration of how high housing is at the moment. They have all these calculations of the cost of living change from going from Michigan to California, but now if houses are that much more expensive, have those calculations been inputted yet? And I think a lot of our customers are behind the ball there.
Well, it's not just price increases, but they can't afford to buy it because of interest rates. If I'm living in a house in like Indianapolis right now and I had a mortgage locked in at 3%, and then I got to move to California and buy a house that's 100% more and interest rates are 5.5%, I can't even move. But I think you've already seen that in the last 12 months trying to get people to relocate to California. It's been very difficult. Whereas, getting someone to go to Texas right now is not so hard.
That's for sure. Right now, 100% of our searches that require reload to California have been our most challenging ones.
I mean, Kane, how's North Carolina real estate market looking?
I have no frame of reference, but what did surprise me though, and this chart that we're looking at here with the monthly mortgage payments, is how, like, because we're only going to be there a short time, so we'll probably rent, and the prices that you have to pay for the amount of house or the convenience of location it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable right now. I guess it matches up with like how much flights you're costing. Just everything seems so expensive.
So let me present this question: what if this is just a new normal? Wages are going to go up. Dude, the Penn Station I drove by has a sign outside that says up to $20 an hour to make sandwiches. I mean, that's annualized. If you get 40 hours a week, that's $40,000 a year to make sandwiches, dude. So
yeah,
if that's where that's going, then you're going to see everyone's wages are going to get pushed up, and they're going to need those wages to afford the new rent prices and the new mortgage prices. Maybe it doesn't crash just because this is the new normal. That's what I said. I'm going to sit back and wait a year, because if it's a new normal, what am I going to lose? But it's a good time, Kane, if you're going to go rent and the market crashes and then you can go buy at the bottom. Sounds pretty good. But, as all these properties go up, so do I did another episode on it, but the property taxes go up. You're like sitting there cool, like my house went up $100,000, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, my property taxes are going to go up 25% too. And then everything's just going to get more expensive, which is going to force wages to go up, and the wages go up, and it's going to make everything else go up. This is where I'm like, I'm not feeling easy about the next 18 months. Because if you looked at what happened in like the late 70s and early 80s, it wasn't a fun time.
Yeah, this is probably only tangentially relevant, but speaking of everything getting more expensive and putting pressure on wages, I was reading, it's a bit nerdy, but I was reading this research paper last night that talked about whether it's better for companies to, when you're facing cuts, when you have to make cuts, to do compensation cuts or to do layoffs. And the consensus of the paper was that it's actually better on many different metrics to do layoffs instead of cutting people's pay to keep yourself in business. And so if we get to this place where things just get too expensive for companies to operate, I think we're going to see a big wave of layoffs, maybe in the next 18 months, as you said, too.
That's what happened in 2008. So the thing is, if you start, for whatever reason, like when things are going well, and I'm thinking of some manufacturing companies I knew that went through the same thing in 2008. If they cut wages, people get really pissed off. And then they just leave. Or then they step back and say, well, maybe we go to a 4-day week. We do like a 1-day layoff type thing. Or you have to take 1 week of layoff every month. And it's like a rolling type of thing. And they figured that would be significant, because you also could go file for unemployment if you're off for the week, I think. Right? So you get something. What do you get? $300 or something? 300, well, maybe it's $400 now. And a lot of people kind of look at that as, I could do that once or twice and it wouldn't kill me. And it's almost like a little bit of paid vacation, if that makes any sense. Is that sustainable for years? Probably not. But no one likes getting their salary cut. And you see salespeople have to deal with that pretty often, where they have a big year. And I'm thinking of a tier 1 automotive where this happened. They had like a VP of sales. They had a really big year, and then they really pushed for raises. And then the next year they did really bad. And the company is like, well, for us to continue, we need to pull your salary back. And they like got mad about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you always want the money when you're doing well, but when you don't perform, you still want to take the money. So I can see where pay cuts isn't an option.
Well, I thought throw in another wrinkle, which is that the reason why the paper argued that layoffs are better than pay cuts is that you can control for who stays and who leaves the company. Yeah. And then you throw in the fact that over the last, whatever it was, since the start of the pandemic, we've had all this movement. You know, we talked about this a lot, but that like last in, first out kind of thing. If you've just made a move in the last 2 years, how ingrained are you with the culture of a company to where you're so valuable to where you don't think that you might be the first on the chopping block if that happens? So, you know, has there been this net benefit to all this movement over the last 2 years for these individuals? If you think over the next 18 months that there's going to be waves of layoffs, it's just an interesting thing to think about, I think.
We've talked about that on my show a few times. I've had that conversation, who knows, a dozen times with friends and family saying, hey, if you just started this job in the last 6 months and there's a downturn, you're going to be the one that gets laid off. And the thought is, I'll deal with that when it comes. And I'm like, all right, well, you left for, 5,000 more, but if you go unemployed for 6 months, how much did you just lose? No one's really putting thought into that game. And it's the great resignation. Tell the companies that they're terrible, go to the next place, and the next place is terrible, and every 9 months, right? So when you talk to, highest levels of HR or CEOs, and they have to make this decision, right? There's a downturn, and again, sometimes you got to do layoffs and pay cuts. You have to survive when the market gets ugly, especially for smaller companies. I think everyone's used to reading the news where Apple and Google have these $150 billion of cash on hand, and they don't have to do stuff like that. Your average small business does not have that luxury. They don't have $10 million sitting in the account to get them through 6 months of bad stuff. But if you ask the CEO, it's like, well, here's 10 people, and 4 of them started with us in the last, 6 months, and their average tenure is 9 months. Are they not the first to get laid off?
Right.
For sure. Especially if it's like a newly created position within a company. I would say those are probably the first ones to go as well.
But this isn't what you read on LinkedIn or social media or TikTok. No one talks about this stuff because most of those people I've never actually sat in a boardroom with the CEO of a $250 million company to hear this conversation. And it's like, well, you've been with me 6 and your average tenure is 9, so you're probably going to leave within the next 6 months anyways. So I'm going to lay you off, and I'm going to make sure I take care of the person that's been with me 6 years. They're going to help me weather the storm, right? So Kane, you're right. In that sense, you can kind of, going through layoffs, you figure out who you can really focus on keeping versus trying to, cut salaries. But even then, you have to do that at times are bad.
Right. So then go on, James. Sorry.
No, good.
So tying it back to our initial conversation, which was around housing prices and mortgage payments, if we get to this place where payments are like rent is more expensive, mortgage payments are more expensive, and then we hit this roadblock over the next 18 months, like are people ready with their piggy banks or with their emergency accounts or whatever to absorb all this? I'm not so certain.
Not in the long run. Dennis, I mean,
No.
do you know anybody that? And I've heard a few of these stories where it used to be a dual income home, but with what happened with wages and like in the last 18 months, like one of the income earners makes so much now that they both don't need to work. Have you ever ran into people like that?
Not as much. Usually the folks that I have spoken with, have kept their jobs. I've not really come across that as much, where the one it went from dual to single.
Or someone was thinking about returning to the workforce and now they don't have to. And so, Ken, I'm thinking if the things really hit the fan, then in some of those cases, you might see some of those people go back to work because we have such a worker shortage. I think we could actually take quite a hit and still have some jobs out there. They might not be the most glamorous jobs, but there's until I don't see the for hire signs anymore, we have hope. And that was 2008 and 2009. You couldn't walk into any McDonald's, any home, you couldn't get a job anywhere. Not even at the lowest level. That is what really crushed the economy. As long as those for hire signs are out there, there's hope.
And I think at the macro level, like the Fed is probably banking on some of that being able to like buoy these rate hikes, which are going to have a negative effect on so many parts of the economy.
Well, they got the talk of the Fed might be able to pull off a soft landing, which I don't know. We'll see about that because I think we're still back to them trying to say we're not going to do the school loan payments. We're still doing things to keep it make it worse, right? But they know that there is room for a pullback here. It's just how much can they actually control how much that pullback is. I don't know if they have that much control.
Considering the accuracy of the transitory statement early days, like the idea of a soft landing, I don't know how true that is.
They've not been right about anything. So that's why it's like, I don't know. We'll see. We've bought so many homes, cars, RVs, boats. Like we bought everything. I gotta imagine credit card debt's up. I gotta imagine car loan totals at an all-time high. And when these interest rates go up, we're not going to be able to afford the cars because cars have gotten really expensive. And then a home, and then the people, all the credit card debt, all of a sudden that starts creeping up. How's the Fed control that? If it just gets to the point to where, I don't know, have you ever seen those people that they get one lucky job and they were making like 50 and now they're making 100, but then they start spending like they make 100, and then that no matter what happens, their next job's not going to pay them anywhere near 100. They lose that job and their next job that's 60, but they built this lifestyle around 100, and then they end up losing it all, right? I'm afraid that's where we're at right now. The job market's booming. You can hop around and get a bunch of money. Very favorable. But when that all crashes, but everyone's still stuck with those bills coming, I don't know if that leaves us in a good spot.
Yeah, that scenario doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, how many times have we seen that happen in this world? So what are you saying, Kane?
What am I saying? I'm hopefully the government sees the value to just keep everything float for a long time, and we can just for the next 80 years be like this. We'll be okay.
Just keep pumping the money in.
Just keep pumping money in. No harm.
Oh, this is like Zimbabwe 2.0. Any parting thoughts, Dennis?
No, I'm with you on just staying put for a little bit. Although I did consider moving again, but I don't want to have to get a condo and move in with the parents or in-laws. So it's not it's not my number one option right now. So I'm just gonna stay put and see what happens.
And that happens like 4 days. Anyone heard from Dennis?
Honestly, you see what potentially you can sell the house for, and you're like, oh man, 2 years I can make a lot of money, but it's like, well, I'm gonna have to spend more to buy another house, and I don't want to do that. The most logical thing is to figure out a way to live for the next year or two, maybe build something, but you'd have to figure out a way to live, whether it is with in-laws or parents or buy a smaller apartment. But it's like, do you want to put your family into that scenario when they're accustomed to a certain lifestyle or house?
That's what I was telling Kane. If he's going to end up, renting right now, might be a blessing. Like you just suck it up, and then by the time you buy, the market crashes. But it's that fallacy, and I'm just going to throw numbers out there because it's the same numbers I used in my episode. Your home's worth 500,000, and the market goes up 10%, and your house goes up 50. But if you want to buy a house for 750, it also went up 10%, so that went up 75,000. You don't really gain anything. You gain sure on your balance sheet, but the affordability doesn't get any better. If you're trying to move up in house, the house that costs more always appreciates more than what you gain. So it's like, yeah, you get more money, but it doesn't make the affordability any easier. In fact, sometimes it increases faster. So, and all you end up doing is really overpaying for the next house. So it's like, sit tight.
Yeah.
I'll sit tight with my 2.5% interest rate.
So it's like, how do you? That's telling somebody. It's like, lock the money up right now on a mortgage, and just when will you ever be able to borrow money again for 2.5%? It's hard to get out. You want to get out of a mortgage of 2.5% and go get into one that's 5.25%. If you want to.
Exactly. I do not want to.
It's and does that start crossing people's mind when the rates go like, I'm not going to move anymore? And does that put a damper on the market as well? So
that's the buy high, sell low personal finance philosophy.
Isn't that what's going on everywhere? It's like, well, the meme stocks are coming back, and the coins are coming back a little bit, but there was this period of time where it's like people were just buying high and selling low. Yeah, I'm gonna try to avoid that one. All right, I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Yep.